Well, guess what? Google wanted to take a page out of Tim Cook's cookbook, and they started making their own silicon, but that's not the only thing they borrowed from Tim Cook. Sounds like no charge brick is starting to become what we call an industry standard when anybody other than Apple does something. If Apple does it, it's considered an outrage. Let's begin. So yeah, I'll admit, when the rumors first started coming around that Apple was considering removing the charge brick, I was a little shocked. I thought it was pushing it a little bit too far, and I knew it would upset people, but I must say, Apple has kind of proved us how little people care about the charge brick, okay? Because iPhone 12 has been a tremendous success. It's seen better sales than the 11 series and the 10S and 10R series, so clearly, average consumer didn't seem to care, but this is the type of courage that people meme Apple for that I actually genuinely believe is courage, because they discovered something that they knew would get a ton of backlash. Like, there was no way Apple was going into this thinking that most people would be proud in praising them for removing the charge brick, but probably to this day, Apple's going to be the only company to acknowledge removing the charge brick on stage and saying specifically, you know, this allows us to move product inventory much more efficiently, and we see that most of our consumers already have chargers with their old iPhones, and we're in a world now where most people have bought smartphones previously and want to keep using their old chargers. And despite all of our criticism, despite all of the backlash we gave Apple for calling them stingy and calling them crazy for removing such a basic function, such a basic feature that's been shipping with smartphones for years, and Apple found a way to get rid of it. But once everyone kind of got over it, and once the iPhone 12 outsold everybody else, you noticed Samsung quickly fell into place as well. That's right, Samsung is selling $1,800 phones that do not come with headphones or a charge brick, and frankly, I'm not here to complain, because honestly, Android has a better argument for getting rid of the charge brick than Apple does, because Android's been on USB-C for many years now, and there's far more cables that already support USB-C, even some from Apple, shipping with their MacBooks, shipping with their iPads, plus USB-C cables are bi-directional. You know, you can plug in either end of the cable to the brick or to the phone, and it makes sense that people who have been using Android for a while have USB-C cables around, and do they need a brand new charge brick every time they upgrade their phone? I don't really necessarily think so. I don't think that there's going to be a giant exodus of people buying the new Samsung foldables or the Google Pixel 6 because it doesn't ship with a charge brick, and they confirmed this through their not announcement of the 6 and 6 Pro, which they're like, it's coming later and we'll tell you prices then, but they have confirmed that the Pixel 5a is shipping with a charge brick, but that's the last one. Of course, you know, you ship your fast charger with the budget phone, but the flagship phones, that's when you get rid of them for some reason. But I'm sure they're falling in line with kind of the same argument Apple has used in the past. You know, if we can thin down these packages, that means we can ship like 70% more phones per truckload per flight, and it results in people not having as much additional bricks and cables that don't really need to go anywhere, because when people trade in their old phone, they don't typically trade in their charger with it, so it just results in years and years of upgrading where every single year we get another cable, and we don't always necessarily use all of those things. So I just personally find it interesting, particularly on Twitter and in comment sections, that when other companies follow on, they look at what Apple's had success with and then decide to do the same thing themselves. Everyone still gets mad at Apple. Even people that are not Apple fans, obviously, they get frustrated because they're like, ugh, I hate when Apple does this, because that means the rest of the industry is going to do the same thing, whether it be not having a, you know, removable battery that's easy to access, or not having expandable storage, or not having a headphone jack. The list goes on and on and on, but so many people get frustrated at Apple, even though they're Android fans, because Google and Samsung or whoever decides to go on with what Apple has already done. Somehow that's Apple's fault, which I have to disagree a little bit here. Your Android companies that you're buying from, I don't really care who they are, there is no law, there is no federal requirement that says they have to follow up and do exactly what Apple has done, right? Like, that's a good thing. But I also find it ridiculous for you guys to get mad at Apple for doing something that they believe made sense for them, and clearly it didn't hurt them financially. They had great success. But if Samsung decides to copy that approach, or Google decides to copy that approach, that is is entirely 100% on them. Just because Apple did it, that does not force these other companies to do it. So in my opinion, it's just a very stupid criticism to act like, oh, come on, Apple, please don't do this because everyone else is going to follow through. No, I mean, if Google wanted to keep the charge brick, they could. You know, if they believe that to be an important feature, they would stand by it. Similar to OnePlus, which is still including the charge brick, and they probably will fight for that for about a year, and then they'll realize, okay, no one else is shipping a charge brick, and we want to have lower prices and higher profit margins on our phones, so yeah, we're gonna remove the charge brick, but we'll make it cheaper as an add-on during checkout, or if you pre-order one, we'll throw in something for free, or that kind of thing. It'd be the exact same situation with the OnePlus and the headphone jack argument. You know, they complained about Apple during a OnePlus event saying, hey, you know, we still keep the headphone jack because we believe that to be a crucial, important feature. Flash forward to today, yeah, eventually they realized the industry moved on, so they didn't really care. But I will applaud and give credit to any company that wants to stand their ground on a feature and say, no, we believe this should be a standard accessory or a standard port, so for that reason, we're going to keep shipping it. We don't care what the rest of the industry thinks. That in itself would require courage. That would require a unique perspective that separates themselves from the crowd, whereas I would argue Apple had the courage to make a decision that they realized would be for the best, and sure, there would be some growing pains and there would be some people frustrated, but ultimately, no one really would care in the end, and no one would really think about it long term. And I guess all I'm trying to say in today's video is Apple was right. We didn't care in the long term, and now when Samsung is removing charge bricks and Google is removing charge bricks, everyone just kind of goes, oh, yeah, okay, makes sense. That's what everybody's doing these days. But when Apple just introduces the idea, everyone loses their minds. And this is just the kind of double standard I think a lot of us give Apple, you know? I think that they test the grounds of what can we get away with and what do we really not need in a product, which I honestly think that discussion of what can we take out is more interesting than what can we put in. Apple figuring out what features are mandatory and what features are not, and how to make the price more competitive with others, and when it's time to move off of a certain standard like the headphone jack, or when it's time to get people to move to more 64-bit apps on the Mac. That type of industry pushing that Apple has done that I think has accelerated our tech development, and I honestly think that wireless headphones would probably not be as good today if Apple did not try to push off the headphone jack sooner. And I also think that the margins and the price points of our phones and the e-waste that comes of bricks would probably be different if Apple decided to keep shipping fast chargers or slow chargers with their iPhones. Everyone else would keep doing it, and then all of our trucks and planes and all of our shipping devices would be using more fuel and putting more tension on global emissions. So the fact that everyone else is following through with Apple, in my opinion, is showing that Samsung, Google, they believe the same arguments Apple is using is working. So I'm not here saying it's not okay for Google and Samsung to do it. In fact, it probably makes more sense because at least they're on USB-C, but just realize the double standard we have in today's tech community, okay? That's all I want you to go home with today. That's about it. But anyway, feel free to let me know what you guys think of the rest of the industry moving on with a standard that Apple introduced. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.